Braun, welcome to Bleav in Vikings. How are you, sir?
Hey, Dustin. Nice to be on here.
Absolutely. Tell us how life's been at Locked On Vikings and zone coverage. It's been a while since we've checked in.
Yeah, doing well at Locked On. Learning a lot of scheme stuff, trying to learn what the new coaches are up to. Doing some history of the Minnesota Vikings stuff too over at my Patreon, patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. Big old docu-series. Part 5 covers the 90s, comes out this weekend.
All right. So Cora, you're with us tonight. Thanks for joining from Woodbury. I want you to interject because I know you have a question for Luke about that. So let's get cracking there.
Huge fan. I do listen almost every day. So love Locked On Vikings. My question, I have 2 right off the bat about that history series. First, what got you started on it? And why? It's really cool. I love listening about it, but
why would one do that to himself?
Yeah, it's painful.
Yeah. So the answer to that is the Secret Base Falcons one. I was watching that last summer and I was just crazy inspired. I loved the tone of it. I loved how human it was. I loved how departed it was from most sports stuff, how it really was a story. There was humanity, there was some soul in it, and it was so much more than what you get in sports coverage, which is a lot of standings and rumors and stats and odds and who should I start in fantasy. And this was so much more about people. And I thought, man, the Vikings version of this would be so good. There's so many wild stories. So I basically started working on it then. I've been working on it kind of all the way through, a little bit through last season. And then once last season ended, I went all the way for it.
Nice. And then off of that, what has been your favorite story, tidbit of information you learned about, something like that so far?
Probably, honestly, this one coming out this weekend about the 90s, because I was a kid. I loved Chris Carter and I loved that John Randall wore cool makeup. There's so much I did not know about these guys. I knew them as cool guys that I would watch with my dad as a 6-year-old, but there's so much more depth to all of those people. This particular one kind of got away from me. I think it's going to end up being the longest one just because I was waxing poetic about trying to understand who Randy Moss was, that is a nuanced person. And trying to portray this is who Randy was, and do that justice. I think the Randy Moss part's 15 minutes long on its own. The whole first episode is 37 minutes.
Kind of highlighted just as long touchdowns.
Yeah.
All right. So Luke, what I'm going to do, I am going to ask you some of the annoying stats, projections, stuff like that.
Let's do it.
Bear with me. These are going to be pretty point blank for me. I'm not sure what Ron will have, but who's going to start week 1 at right guard, sir? Jesse Davis or Ed Ingram? What say you?
I think Ed Ingram has run away with it. I think he did that a while ago, and the only reason he's playing in preseason games is because they're just trying to get some tread on his tires. Mm-hmm. But he did really well in that Raiders game, that first preseason game. Mm-hmm. And Jesse Davis did not. And then Ed Ingram immediately came out, took all the first team reps for all the joint practices. Mm-hmm. And all rookies that were healthy enough to play have played, whether they're in competitions or not or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I think they just went, yeah, Ed Ingram, you're going to start, but we're getting you in against the 49ers and we're going to get you some practice here. I mean, he's a rookie, right? Mm-hmm. But I think Ed Ingram has outplayed Jesse Davis by a lot. I don't think it's close anymore. I think that's pretty much decided.
Does Jesse Davis or Wyatt Davis, do they make the 53 man?
I don't think Wyatt Davis does.
Okay.
I don't think he's transitioning to the NFL very well. I don't know. Whispers going around. And that happens, it's a different world. I'm sure Bryant can tell you. It's different intensity, a different culture, and some guys just don't go from college to the NFL and succeed, even if they looked great in college. Jesse Davis is currently, his contract makes him, it's not really an option to cut him. It's actually more expensive to cut him than it would be to keep him on the 53 and never play him. But you could see a cut down day trade to a team like the Raiders, who actually need some interior help. They've had some injuries on their O-line, or another team that's had problems like that. Mm-hmm. I could see something like that, but Jesse Davis probably makes the team. Being able to play guard and tackle is usually going to be enough if you're even a little bit competent at either. So I think you can, and there's not a lot of roster pressure because other positions are thin. So there's room to keep a guy like Jesse Davis on. But it's either keep him or trade him.
Okay. BMAC for the big picture, whether it's on the field, the off field noise, what is the biggest transition in your case from Miami to Minnesota? Oh, it looks like BMAC must be on his America's Got Talent call. Still.
Is he voting?
No, I think they're giving him.
I think he froze. Oh no, there.
No, I just think he's occupied for a minute. We'll circle back, Bryant. Ron, don't let me forget that question.
Yep.
Take it away for Luke Braun.
Yeah, Luke, nice to meet you. Again, my name's Ron. So, like I've said for years back in the Braun days, like the Braun spelling has done a lot for the pronunciation of my name. So
there you go. Yeah.
But,
I always say like the razor. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's simple enough. But anyway, so me, I know when I first kind of came on as a guest and whatever, they picked my brain, whatnot. One of the fun stories I always tell is how I became a Vikings fan. Now, me being born and raised here in Minnesota, obviously, like the gift and the curse of holding that to my name is being a Minnesota homer, which is always a letdown one way or another. So, and I know you're based in LA right now, but how did you become a Vikings fan, and how, like you mentioned earlier that you grew up watching Chris Carter and John Randall, do your roots with Vikings go back that far, and kind of how did you get started with all that?
I was probably a Vikings fan before I had object permanence. Born in Minnesota. I had the 3D poster on my bedroom as a little tyke. I mean, toddling around. Yeah, I had a little. I think my dad might still have my Jeff George jersey. And it probably, I was 6 years old, so it's a Jeff George jersey that would fit, or a 7. Yeah, that was, I think, the first jersey I had. I might have had one for like a baby or something, but yeah, it's been that. So I grew up in Minnesota. My dad was born the same year the Vikings started, so he's kind of attached for that. Whole family's in Minnesota. I came out to LA for college, and now I live and work out here. But yeah, I kind of kept myself connected to the team.
Cora, what's your next up? What do you got?
Now I'll jump back into a little bit of the roster questions. How are they faring tight end wise?
It's a concern. Look, I don't believe, I mean, they've been really insistent that Irv Smith is going to be ready for week 1. I kind of feel like giving them the benefit of the doubt off the bat here. We have no reason to believe that they'd be like lying about that. I mean, of course they would lie about anything with injuries because it would mess the Packers up for week 1. But like, I don't know. I don't think, like, knowing the nature of that kind of injury, that thumb ligament injury, that's the same injury Drew Brees had a couple years ago, and it knocked him out for 5 weeks. Irv Smith suffered it, I think, 5 or maybe 6 weeks before week 1. So like, yeah, that timeline tracks. But if he can't go, or if he gets hurt again, yeah, the depth's pretty concerning. Right now, my 53, we just had a 53 come out at zone coverage with Nick Olson. We have Johnny Munt and Ben Ellefson. I think those two guys are the best blockers. And I think when we are talking about tight ends, we really underrate blocking. Like, teams care a lot more about that than fans do. And so if you're trying to predict who makes the team, look at how they block. I would love for it to be Zach Davidson. I really wanted it to be Zach Davidson, but he messed up on special teams. He had that drop. You can't make a 53 doing that kind of stuff. So I think it's Ellefson, who's genuinely like a very good blocker. Like, he's, I think, one of the best 15 blocking tight ends in the league. Nice. And Johnny Munt, I think he's just kind of there, but consistency is better than inconsistent, but a flat. It's really easy to remember one good play, and it's really easy to miss, a blown block or getting blown up or something like that. So consistency is key, and that's Johnny Munt. It's not an exciting group after Irv Smith, but yeah. I am very excited about Irv Smith. I think he's going to be good to go by week 1, and then I think we're all going to forget all these injury problems if he can just string it together. He's been a little unlucky.
Kind of a follow-up to that. Do you think there's any, I know there's been talks about the Dolphins listening for trade offers for like Mike Gesicki and other guys that are out there? Do you think there's a veteran that may be a cap casualty or that may be cut, that may become available? That's not Chris Herndon, 3rd round pick for, but something that I've been saying it for months that like the tight end position it makes me nervous, like just the depth, and that was with the healthy Irv Smith. So if he can't stay on the field, that's another layer to it. And so anyone come to mind that you think could be a potential option for the purple?
Yeah, I'm not super into Gesicki, just because he can't block.
Name.
I don't know about who else would maybe be a cap casualty for tight end, but you're probably looking at the Chris Herndon sized move where, I mean, that was, they traded a 4th and they got a 6th back. That amounts to about a 5th rounder. So who did you get for a 5th rounder? Maybe a 6th rounder, that kind of thing, for like a tight end 3 kind of guy, Luke Stalker type people. But the one name I'm looking at is actually on the offensive line, has been Lloyd Cushenberry. The Broncos have a really interesting center situation right now. They've got a 5th round rookie, Luke Wattenberg, getting first team reps, maybe pushing to start. Lloyd Cushenberry has been a fine starter for them, but if they can get a 5th round rookie and maybe offload a little bit of cash on the last couple of years of that first round or that rookie contract, they might want to do that and get a draft pick and stuff and try to get rid of the redundancy. We have a great relationship with the Broncos. We're about to go see the Broncos live. We went and played Nick Mullins and traded for him. So I don't know. We have his former offensive line coach is now working here. Like, we've got a bunch of old Broncos staff. We know about this guy.
And Cushenberry was a mid-round pick, if I remember, like not too long ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. So 3 years.
Yeah. And
3rd round. Sorry. I think 3rd round 2 years ago, I Bleav.
Yeah. He's got 2 years left on his deal. I don't know. It makes way too much sense, and there's been a lot of whispers circling around that they're looking for center help. I think that is it makes too much sense not to be the move if they trade for anyone, or maybe they just roll with Bradbury, but I don't think it'll be anybody else on the roster.
One thing about tight ends that I guess I'll cautiously point out is I'm with you guys. It doesn't seem deep as normal, but we're so accustomed to the last 3 years to having a Rudolph and Smith sandwich or Conklin Smith, and it doesn't have to be that, that robust at the top of it. If you look last year, the Rams had Tyler Higbee and Johnny Munt, and bada bing, they won a Super Bowl. So I think we've just got used to this way of living where you have 1A and 1B Rudolph or Conklin, and in addition to Smith. So while indeed we could stand to get richer, you kind of start to look at the roster and say, well, if they just traded for Nick Mullins and addressed that problem, they're probably content with what they have at tight end. That's the way I try to rationalize it anyhow,
right.
Because Ron has brought up the skimpiness there for quite a few months now.
They just won't use 2 as much. Like they are going to use 11 personnel, 10 personnel. They are not Kevin Stefanski or Gary Kubiak living out of 2 tight ends. They're going to live in 3 wide receiver, 4 wide receiver, maybe 1 tight end on the field. But it's going to be a lot more. I mean, these Rams, these McVay, Shanahan offenses are a lot about just get your best 5 out there. And for the last few years, the best 5 has included 2 tight ends because we didn't have a wide receiver 3. But now we've got a lot of depth there, and it's get the best 5 out there. You could even see Ham line up as like in the wing, line up where you would typically see tight ends and do those jobs, do those blocking assignments. And shoot, we've seen him high point one on the sideline. He can run a route.
Yeah, indeed he can.
He can block. So.
Yeah.
You talked about your 53 man with Nick coming out. So, and then talking about Ham just now. Do they keep 5 running backs, or who's the odd man out, Luke?
Both Nick and I had the same group, which was 5 running backs.
Oh, wow.
Dalvin, keep Madison, Wangu, and we both think Ty Chandler did enough to make the team as a 6th round rookie. I had been on the cut Madison, Wangu can be running back 2 train for a long time. He proved what he needed to prove for me in the 49ers game. He was very sound in blocking. He did all his assignments right. He didn't have any stupid vision mistakes, which we know Madison is want to do that kind of thing. He's been doing it his whole career, but he had a really consistent game. He wasn't in for a lot of snaps, but he was consistent in that 49er game. He showed me what I needed to see to go, okay, like, it was kind of like if he has a disastrous camp, he gets cut kind of thing. Like if he has an average camp, he's fine. And I think he's had an average camp, so he'll be fine.
Okay, so they keep all 5. Well, yeah, that reduces the mystery because, some have floated that Ham could be on the chopping block. You certainly can't get rid of Chandler because, he just looks so damn good and he's got all the glorious upside. So, all right. So Luke and Nick have 5 running backs all together with Ham. B-Mac, are you back, sir?
I am.
Okay, wonderful. What I was asking you earlier when we were talking about one of the Vikings guards transition to the NFL hasn't gone as great as he would have hoped. In the big grand scheme of things on the field or off the field, what was the biggest transition from the University of Miami to Minnesota when you came in?
I'm gonna say, as far as football, probably technique. Because when you're in college, some of those guys are freshmen, sophomore, you can just overpower them.
Mm-hmm.
So some people don't have to rely as much on technique, but when you get to NFL, the guys are stronger when you first get there, or just have better technique. So you have to focus on, especially offensive lineman, great hand placement and having good technique. And maybe that's not something that he's gotten used to yet.
Okay. But you mentioned there, right there, Bryant, use the word, the overpower. Obviously, like Mount McKinney, like everyone knew your size and power coming into the league. And I know you've talked about like players like Dwight Freeney and those smaller guys are the ones who gave you the most trouble. We're in a safe place here. It's all right to admit if there's any faults or whatever. Was there ever a player that you felt ever overpowered you, or did you feel like if you're on your game, no one's getting the best of you?
Overpower. I never had an issue because I was a heavy guy too. So I don't think I had an issue of feeling overpowered. If anything, like I said, like a KGB was a guy who was very slick in his movements, and he had great technique as far as using his hands that I had to get used to early in my career.
But you were never getting bull rushed by anyone.
Not really. I knew how to sit down on bull rush, and I was already like 350 coming to the league, so I was.
And you had the footwork. You're a left tackle, so
I knew how to sit down on a bull rush. I never had an issue with. Far as power, I preferred power because then it turned into a wrestling match.
Right.
Then like these slick, these guys running a 4-4 off the edge that
with a lot of bend to get
those guys. Once you got your hands on them, you can send them flying. But it was just make sure you did that.
Right.
Ron, what do you got next for Luke?
So Luke, obviously, like we talked about, being a Vikings fan, especially when you grow up in that life, all we want is one, like, realistically.
One
like,
before we all die. Yeah.
Right. And it could be one in, any of the sports, it's obviously like I'm old enough to have seen 2 Twins World Series. I granted don't remember much of them, but at least I've seen them. But what would it be like for you, especially now living out of state, and like just to have that raw emotion of just one, especially with it being football, because we know football reigns supreme. What would that feeling mean to you?
Yeah. So I already know, I've talked to my dad a lot about this. We're either, if we can afford it, we're going, but that's going to be kind of a game time decision. If we can afford it, we'll find a way. We'll fly wherever, we'll get the ticket, we'll splurge, we'll blow our whole saving. We're going to be at it. But if we can't go, I don't care where my dad is, I'm going to be with him. And man, when it comes to I know they say like football is family and it's this like super cheesy hokey line, but man, it really is. Before I got into Viking stuff, I've only been doing this for 5-6 years. And I've been out in LA for longer, and I was, working, doing the Hollywood thing, right? I didn't have a lot of reason to come home. I didn't have a lot of money to be able to come home, and you kind of drift away from people in your life, friends and family and stuff. You don't get relationships. You can call people, but you got to remember to, and like extended family, like am I going to call like random whoever, right? And then you get into Viking stuff, and they're all into Viking stuff too. And it gives you something to talk about. And I think that that has reconnected. I feel so much more connected with my immediate and extended family than I ever have. And a lot of it is doing this history thing, because I now have, I just went and researched and watched a game that my grandpa remembers vividly. I just talked to him today about like stuff from the 70s that he remembers, like, oh, this is what I was doing. And, my dad has all these stories that he's never figured to tell me about how he had to watch the games in the 80s because they were only regional and he'd be on a sales trip or whatever. And it's a campfire to gather around. It gives you something to talk about. It gives me a reason to go home from camp, stay with my sister. I now see my sister twice a year. I didn't used to. And I can watch kids grow up and be part of their lives. That's what the Vikings have done for me. Win a Super Bowl or not, nothing's taken that away. But it adds so much. And we've all been through so much, and we've all been hurt so much. I can't imagine if they win a Super Bowl being shoulder to shoulder with my dad. Probably be one of the most meaningful moments of my life.
Are you
Yep.
gonna make it back for the parade?
I can never really care about the parades.
It's because we've never
wanna
had
see
one.
the game. I want to, yeah, true. I want to celebrate the game. I'll see the game, but the actual parade feels like take your lap and enjoy it, and everybody go get drunk. I think I'd rather view that on social media than
Fair.
be like at it in a crowd.
Luke, back in May of 2021, before you and I's friend Joe Johnson passed away, he came on this show, and we somehow the same question came up, and he had the exact same answer. His most fond Vikings memories are going to training camp with his dad. He pounded that home. Of course, in that same sentence, he goes, "It makes me feeling uncomfortable talking about this with you guys." He said that on live air. But yeah, if it's for sure, it was he and his dad going to training camp. And I think for a lot of us, and especially with my kids that are little now, I hear stories like yours, stories like Joe's, and say, I think we're on a good path. Because the campfire aspect, you nailed it.
Well, even like just, everyone we've gotten a chance to meet through this show,
Mhm.
like obviously Dustin, you and I met over Twitter. Like, it's like, it does, like, it's cool to have that outlet now, especially with social media, where you can interact with people that don't live locally, like the Enrique from Brazil, like just
Mhm.
that you have voices across the world that you can now connect and share these mutual shared experiences with. So it's and Luke, I get you 100%, like whatever that you when it happens in that 2009 year, me and my buddies, I was back, we had just finished college or whatever, and we were all doing the early career stuff, and I'm like, if the Vikings win this game, we're hopping in a car, we're driving to Miami. We don't care where we're going to stay or whatever, but we're driving to just go and tailgate the Super Bowl. That's all we wanted to do. And we're making plans, like, just, okay, if it happens, what day do we leave? Like, what are we going to do? And now that I'm older and, now it's like, all right, I will be home. I will be with family, friends, whatever, just for that experience.
So my dad was at the 98 game, the Gary Anderson game.
Yeah.
And this is January 1999. You cannot just go on to Ticketmaster and like book your tickets, right? But when they were ahead in that game and it felt foregone, it was over. He had a friend that was a referee that he knew that could hook him up with Super Bowl tickets, but you got to act now. You can't wait till the end of the game. You got to do it. And so he was like, man, we're really ahead. He and his brother were like, let's do it. He and his brother got 2 tickets to Miami before that game ended. And so the game ends and they lose. And it's, oh my God, what did we just do? But they're like, well, we can't get rid of these now. Like, we just bought tickets to the Super Bowl. We're not going to not go.
Yeah.
So they all just went and took a weekend in Miami and they watched John Elway and the Falcons going, this should have been us.
Oh man, yeah, you'd almost have to
shoot.
with that investment, and Elway went in number 2. That was a big deal. All right, Cora, take it away. What's next?
Well, I was trying to come up with a really good one, not asking about the nitty gritty, but I think Caleb Evans. We all love him. You love him, especially because of his rabbit. Where do you see him fitting in? He also is one of the players who interacts a lot with fans.
he seems like a really nice guy. Right now I've got him as the last corner on the depth chart. But like deservedly, not just making the team because he was a 4th round pick like James Lynch did that one year. I think just depth right now, special teams.
Mhm.
He's I don't think he's played well enough to like rotate to justify rotating in. He's playing a little soft, playing a little bit conservative, and that's just a corner without enough comfort in the system and in the speed of the NFL to have like confidence. As a corner, you need confidence. That's why I love Andrew Booth. Just a confidence, whether you've earned it or not. You have to have it as a corner because you have to play something aggressive. Like as soon as you start playing hesitant, that's what happened to Bashad Breeland and Cameron Dantzler last year. That's why they got so burned and everything got caught in front of them, is because they played way further off than they ever had to because they were always so scared of getting beat deep. Can't play scared. But he's willing in the run. He's plays physical. He can tackle. All that stuff matters a ton. But right now, I think it's he might be on the 53, maybe not even active for game days unless he has a special teams role. But that's where he is right now, and kid can just develop.
What about Ndamukong Suh? Do the Vikings in his camp ever meet in the middle money-wise, or is this just much ado about nothing?
I wanted it. I would love Suh to come to the Vikings, but man, some of these depths DN types, the interior T.Y. McGill and Jonathan Bullard, they're cooking. Suh who?
Yeah.
We don't need him. We got the next Tom Johnson in the building.
Sebastian Thunderbucket himself.
Yeah. I really like what I've seen from that group. In my 53-man roster, I couldn't bring myself to cut one. I kept 6 people on the interior defensive line. So the group is so much deeper than I kind of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Not that is Jonathan Bullard is not a reason to go out and get Ndamukong Suh, but it is a reason to say, hey, we don't really have to pay out the nose. You're a luxury, and we can give you the offer that we want to pay, not the offer we have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
I would still like it. If I had to guess right now, I would say nothing. I would say it doesn't get done and somebody else grabs him, or maybe he just doesn't play this year. But if they did grab him, I'd be pretty hyped.
And are you therefore content with Watts as the starter in that spot?
Yeah, it's because he comes off the field kind of anytime they go to their nickel packages.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that comes off the field. Their nickel turns into a 4-2. They do have like a 5-1 nickel, or call it a 3-3-5 if you want to call Hunter and Za'Darius linebackers. That's also like a package that they can use, and it depends on the other team's personnel and matchups and what you want to do. It's a game plan thing, which would have Watts be on the field more. But I think I don't foresee Armon Watts playing more than half the snaps just because of the way the sub package works. The sub package distribution works, and everybody's got you a nickel all the time. This is a wide receivers league, so you're going to have a lot more. I think Chandon Sullivan outsnaps him, and so I'm not too worried about it.
Okay. All right. Let's do one more round with Luke question-wise. But Bryant first, in case we forget, give us the America's Got Talent update on your guys' fate, the choir.
The choir, we are still in the runnings for becoming a wild card. And like I said, if we get selected by a judge, it'll be 3 other teams that we'll be up against, and we'll have to do a voting, and America will have to vote to see who they would want out of the 4. So hopefully America votes for us. So we're kind of was game planning that situation. And if we do make it, we'll have to fly back to LA around September 7th and be there till the 15th and perform in the finals.
Nice.
Ooh, okay. So we should know in a matter, oh God, that's only 2 weeks away. So we should know.
Yes.
Here. Okay.
So we'll know on a Tuesday night. And the voting window was so short. It's as soon as the show's over, voting goes from the moment the show ends till 7 a.m. Eastern.
So now
you
you guys
10 times per phone or laptop or whatever.
That's what I did last time.
Yeah.
So now you guys, I know you have a lot of people that are in the choir, say current players that aren't able to make it. Now, obviously, if they string it along, you have a bunch of schedules now that you're intermixing with. So is that going to impact you guys, potential going forward, that you're not going to have everyone able to compete, or are you guys able to work that all out right now?
We kind of worked that out in the semifinals because during the semifinals, guys were in training camp who were a part of the audition and stuff. So we have, people to fill in for those guys who couldn't attend.
Okay.
All right, Ron, let's do one more thing apiece for Luke. What do you got?
All right, Luke. So you mentioned your 53 that you have currently here. Who on that list, or who do you have as the most surprising cut that you either are predicting or that you potentially foresee coming?
That's really tough because I don't think there are a lot of surprises anymore. Some people might be surprised if Nick and I cut Kellen Mond, but I mean, after the preseason that he's had, I think it's time.
Yeah.
Maybe just in general, 4 second-year, third-round picks, and we both have one of them making it, and it's not even controversial. Man, that's
who's
lot.
The one? No, I
Patrick
can't even
Jones.
remember. Okay, so no Surratt.
Yeah, he's had a great summer. Yeah, no Chaz Surratt. I got him on the practice squad, though. I actually like what he showed in the 49er game. I thought he sifted really well, and I I like the tenacity. He played with a lot of, he played very fast, and that was really good. But not enough for me to put him on the roster. And plus, with inside linebackers, like this is part of just moving to a new scheme. You just don't have as much need for those off-ball type backers. You only have one or two on the field, like ever. Not like with Zimmer, where you could have 3 on the field, or shoot, sometimes some packages have 4 on the field when you needed that to be like a 7 deep room. I think they're keeping 4. So you're losing. I lost Troy Dye. I lost Chaz Surratt. For kicks and giggles, I kept Ryan Wright over Jordan Berry. But that's a punt off now. I wrote that before I knew it was a punt off, although I still would have made the same decision just because it's fun to do content. But yeah, I don't know. I guess Kellen Mond, there's like not much surprising out there. A lot of people have Zach McLeod in their 53s. I don't. I haven't seen it.
I think,
I guess that's it.
I think from a high level, you and me and even Ron and Cora are so deep into the Viking stuff on a daily basis, almost minute basis, to know what they're doing from a bird's eye view or a regular person's view. Mond not making the roster is a big damn deal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's not a guarantee. Like maybe you've seen him show enough. I mean, there was that one play against the 49ers. He rolls out of the pocket. He hits BC Johnson in kind of a scramble drill. It was gorgeous. Mm-hmm. He's made some good throws. He's made some quicker reads. He's gotten to his checkdowns quickly. That was a big thing for him, is that he couldn't get all the way to his checkdown before he got sacked. He still can't do it consistently, but he's doing it at all. It's a step forward. Maybe you keep him as a third quarterback and see if this doesn't come together a little bit better next year. But spending a roster spot on that, I didn't. I don't think it did that. And then the question that I always pose that kind of sealed it for me is, okay, 2024, who's a better quarterback? Kellen Mond or Nick Mullins? Can we say Kellen Mond? Because I don't think I can. I can't say in 2 years Kellen Mond's a better quarterback than Nick Mullins. And then it's like, you know what? If I'm going to put a bunch of resources into developing a quarterback and then I'm going to put resources into developing Nick Mullins, who's 27 years old. I mean, he's not old or anything. I'm going to see if I can't make him a little bit better. And this stupid project that the last guy drafted can be someone else's problem.
Yeah, I think
go ahead, Dustin.
I just think the only reason that you would say, oh, well, yeah, hopefully it's Mond or it will be Mond, is you're just laden with this dream of the upside. And, that's all it is a dream.
And it's like not that much upside. Like he can run as much as any young quarterback can. He's got a rocket of an arm. But it's not like he's Josh Allen back there. Like,
right. It's not even like Jalen Hurts back there. It's like,
it's not this crazy talented thing. He's got a big arm. That's the upside. He's got okay mobility.
The thing about him when he was drafted in April of 2021 is he's basically stylistically everything that Cousins isn't. So when people dreamt about what life would look like without Cousins, the easiest thing to imagine would be Mond. But then the guy also has to be good and able for everything to work out. And we've got to
make a team first, baby steps.
You got to beat Sean Mannion out, to go to your next chapter. And
which is why I think he'll end up on the practice squad, because I don't see another team picking him up and you putting him on their roster. Like it's not going to happen. So if he's your practice squad guy, great. Like if it was between him and Mannion, I'll be on the table pounding my fist for Mond. But getting Mullins, we have a quality backup who shown he can play in the NFL. Excuse me. So if they just outright cut Mond and then look for the waiver wire for a practice squad guy, I'm fine with that too. I'm not tied to any one of those picks that potentially just won't pan out. Maybe that was Spielman's big last FU to the team. Like, I'm gonna go rogue and draft a bunch of guys that I know can't do it. Because how do you miss on 3 guys in that? And Patrick Jones is to be determined. But how do you miss that early on that many guys?
The tell-all in about 5 years is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
That's where like the turnaround, like from one year to the next, like of where we see Ed Ingram, like where Ed Ingram looks like he belongs. He's moving people. He's showing the athleticism. And it's like, so one regime drafts a guy who was this, everyone had touted going into the year as the top guard prospect, whatever. And then clearly fans are clamoring, why isn't he out there? Because we're watching I guess it wasn't Dozier, but Ole Udoh hold every other play, false start, all this. So clearly Wyatt Davis wasn't any good and he hasn't made any improvements. So glad to see at least that, a couple weeks before the season that they rectified that with a second round pick.
Yeah.
All right. What's your final thing for Luke, Cora?
So at training camp, what was because I know things were different, obviously, from last year because of COVID and whatnot, but what was your favorite either moment on the field, experience that you had there, or something for people who don't get there regularly?
You just couldn't take your eyes off of Justin Jefferson. It was unbelievable. Like and I remember saying this about him last year too. And he just, like, when you run a route and when you're running a route just in individual drills, you're not even doing one-on-ones yet. You're just like drilling routes. And everybody runs theirs, and I'm sitting there watching, like, how quick do they get in and out of their break? I'm trying to see who looks the smoothest, who's got the athleticism. Does this Thielen look any slower? Like, I'm looking for that kind of stuff. And then Justin Jefferson goes, and he is just putting random little leans and little extra arm things and little, like, and every move has its purpose. And you can see, like, oh, he wanted the corner to think it was a post, and then he actually wanted the corner to think it was post corner, and then it's actually a go route. And you can see, like, the technique put into that. It's like artistic, like it's so creative, and it pushes the boundaries of what route running is supposed to be. Like, his routes tell the corner a story, and that is a rare thing. Like, you're lucky if you can get somebody to hit their marks and get in and out of it quickly enough and have the good enough agility to do it, right? And with Jefferson, there's so much extra deception in it, and it's all purposeful. Like, it's not just random window dressing. Like, it's very intentional. And like, watching that, like, I could spend an hour breaking down one route and talking about the story that it tells to the defensive back. And he's just, like, unguardable. The only person who's had any success, a little bit Cameron Dantzler, which is incredible. And sometimes Patrick Peterson. 49ers couldn't do anything against him. I wasn't there for that, but he was just, like, totally unguardable. He's going for 2K. He said it. He called it. He's doing it. I can't tell him he's wrong. He's going for 2K.
Let's see, Luke, you were on my YouTube show about 3 months ago, and you seemed to indicate that you were skittish about Cousins' ability to start taking risks, or, you wish he would do it because when time comes, he usually takes the safe bet. I think in order for the Vikings to thrive and effectuate this playoff mentality they have, he's going to have to do that. So do you think he actually does that? And then have you settled on a win-loss record prediction, or you still need a little while?
I don't have a great win-loss prediction for them, just because, a lot of young players on the defense, everybody's learning new stuff. Nobody comes out perfectly polished right off the bat. It just doesn't happen. We're going to need a little patience here. I think I'll probably settle on like a 7-10. And if they look, if the arrow's pointing up by the end of the year, if it feels good, I'll be happy. Like, I don't expect, if they make the playoffs, I'm doing backflips, because I just think that there's a lot more to learn. They're relying on young corners. They can't do the Fangio defense stuff that I think they'll want to do, because they don't have the talent on the outside right now. Unless Cameron Dantzler has this crazy third-year leap and it turns out he's this great corner, then maybe you can start doing more man-to-man stuff. So they're going to be chasing every game. There's going to be a lot of situational football if that's the case, a lot of 2-minute drills. And Cousins, here's the deal. He's been very good in situational stuff in camp. Camp's different than games, so we got to take it all with a grain of salt. But the last 2, even 3 years, he's been a catastrophe in situational drills, and he's like good at them in this one. So something to keep in mind. But for me, it's all about, do we believe that Kevin O'Connell can wrest that out of him, get him to be willing to progress past a safe option. And Cousins actually talked about this, and because he's a quarterback, explained it way better than I ever could. And I've been trying to explain it for like 2 years. But it's when you see, like, hey, the hook is open. I used an example on my show a few weeks ago of like smash, where you have a hook on the outside, and then the slot corner or the slot receiver runs like a corner route. So a high low, right? And you kind of progress low to high, because the low route is going to develop faster because it's shorter. So if that hook is there, Cousins will always throw it, regardless of any indications that corner will be there. If the safety moves to the other side and, oh man, that slot corner is playing inside leverage, you got a receiver that's going to break outside and deep, and the single high safety has gone to the other side of the field. That's going to be open. And you know that's going to be open before it breaks. It's that anticipation thing that you always hear like commentators talk about. But he wouldn't do that. He would take, Bird and Hansworth two in the bush, that kind of thing. And it's a philosophical thing. And you could probably sit there and argue with Kirk Cousins and have a pretty back and forth discussion about what's correct to do in that scenario. But O'Connell's trying to get him to progress past it and say, hey, that's there. But if you get this, single high look with the right leverage and stuff, progress past it because something better might be there. That, if that bears out on the field, look out.
Okay.
I'll add to that kind of because I that's one of the things I've said a lot about Cousins where, and I don't know if it's all on him or part of it was because of who was in charge the past few years, where he's too meticulous at time through his reads, where if something breaks down or if it's scripted one way, he's not looking elsewhere. Like he's going to go to B rather than go to directly to D. I think this year you're going to see the FU Kirk come out, like, because I think as much as he wants to stay away from it. Yeah, I think as much as he wants to stay away from social media and stuff, he hears the noise. He knows it and everything. Now the compensation side's not really even a factor because he's being paid where he should be as far as an average annual value. But I think he's going to play a lot freer and not be afraid to make mistakes because in his time in Washington, he was prone to turn the ball over a little bit. Like he threw it up for grabs. I think you're going to get more of that. And clearly he has the best wide receiver tandem he's ever had, like including his Washington time. So I think the 2K for Jefferson is legit. I think that's a legit goal because of the 17 games, obviously. I think Thielen's going to get double-digit touchdowns again. I think, like I said, I think you're going to see an FU Kirk that we haven't all seen. And, it's going to, as Vikings fans, it's going to be fun. Now, are there going to come more turnovers? Probably, but as long as they're not like throwing it right to Deion Jones, not looking a couple of years ago, if it's 3rd and 17 and he's throwing a deep out and throws a pick, I'm okay with that. Get a little Favre in your game. There's a reason why one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. Also, his interception record will likely never get caught because no quarterback's given that much time.
All right, BMAC, all week I kept my ears open on that Brad Childress thing, and I could not figure out why he was, unless Luke knows something we don't, I couldn't figure out why he showed up at Vikings training camp.
He showed up at Viking training camp?
Yeah, you didn't know that? Brad Childress.
No, I did not.
Yeah, that was under the radar.
Right?
Nobody knew. We seen a picture. That's how we know.
Yeah, last Wednesday.
What are you doing here?
Last Wednesday, Luke, he was hanging out, photographed with Ziggy on the sideline of Vikings training camp when the Niners were there. And we spent about 10 minutes on the show last week trying to diagnose why the hell he would have been there. Nobody could figure it out.
Yeah, I guess you're making the rounds. I guess you can show up to whatever camp you want when you're a former head coach and just like go say hi. I would imagine he still probably has a decent relationship with Ziggy. Yeah, it ended on a bitter note, but like, man, we can all just forget 2010 and just be like, you know what? Let's let that one recede into memory.
I hear you. All right, Luke, tell all the listeners and viewers where to find you, sir, on Twitter and your writings. And
Sure. My Twitter is Luke Braun NFL. Locked on Vikings also. You can find the show on Twitter. My Patreon is patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. You can find the history doc there. And then I'm going to do some film breakdowns and some other stuff, articles, all sorts of stuff on Patreon over the season. Going to try to do stuff with a little more creative freedom because I don't have to answer to anybody anymore when I'm doing that. So join me on there. I would love it. You can also find, like I said, History of the Minnesota Vikings, a 7-part documentary series. Parts 1 through 4 are out. Parts 5 through 7 will come out one every weekend, all the way up to the beginning of the season. You can also find me on Zone Coverage and the Minnesota Football Party, as well as an ensemble show that I'm a part of on the Locked On Minnesota Sports podcast feed.
Wonderful. All right, sir. We will invite you back probably mid-season to see if this 7-10 that you predict is on the way, and you can break it down for us. But that's all we got for Bleav in Vikings, and Skol, baby.